Good morning. Welcome to Community Voice. I'm your host, Keith Parris. I want to thank everybody for joining us this morning. Good morning. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Good morning, Debo. Good morning, Jermaine.
Good morning.
And again, let me shout out Michelle. But again, that's Lettucey performing at the game this past Sunday in her rendition of Lift Every Voice and Sing. And boy, it was last year I was really hating because what was her name? They were actually marching, but this was just beautiful. Lettucey is probably just one of the great voices in the world right now. And so that beautiful rendition, I know there was controversy around whether or not it should have been done, but I'm glad that it was in fact done. All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
As we're in Black History Month, and Milwaukee Films Black Lens has a whole group of offerings of movies in tribute and honor of Black History Month, and we're joined in studio by Mr. Ty Williams. He's the programmer
Hello.
for Black Lens. What's happening, man? Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you for having me again. Good to be back.
Good. So let's get right into it. So we had the programming. I had and by the way, I can do this later. So where are we right now? We've already had several films. What were the films we've had already?
Yeah, so we had on the 2nd, we played Dry Longzo as our kickoff movie, the rendition of the book by Colleen Smith. And then on the 7th, we had just played Do the Right Thing, which that was very fun. Lots of beautiful people in the crowd enjoying just a really great movie. So I think that one was a really fun time. This weekend, though, we have 3 I want to highlight specifically in case you're trying to go out this weekend. Valentine's Day, we've got Obsessed. And then the day after that, we've got Who Killed Captain Alex on the 15th. And then another one I'm really excited for is Nation Time on the 16th.
So when you, you have a wide range of films. So just as you go through the list, give us just a brief synopsis of the premise of those films.
Yeah. So our Valentine's Day movie, Obsessed, with Idris Elba and now Album of the Year winner, Beyonce, is kind of a cheap, well, not cheap, but like it's based off of those like kind of cheap Hallmark Lifetime thrillers where there's a femme fatale and Beyonce is getting her husband stolen away by a mysterious woman that Idris Elba works with. I think it's a really good movie for Valentine's Day if you want something kind of fun. It's kind of a hidden classic, so I recommend it. And then we've got Who Killed Captain Alex on the 15th at 9 p.m., which is Uganda's proclaimed first action movie. Made by a group of people who did not have a lot of resources to film equipment, but still made a pretty fun action film for many to enjoy. And then we have Nation Time on the 16th, which is about a political convention in Gary, Indiana in 1972, where political activists and civil rights advocates across the board all came together to answer the question of what is the Black agenda. They never came to a consensus, but the discussion is what is within the film, which is still very, very important. I think it's very poignant, important for this month. And then we've got Boys in the Hood.
Kind of go back to that because it is prominently featured in that film is the Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Yes.
One of the conveners. It ended up being, what's his name? Amir Baraka, and the significance of having it in Gary, Indiana, which was then like a chocolate city.
Yeah.
Richard Hatch was one of the first Black men to be elected mayor, and the backdrop, and then it kind of exemplifies that we're not a monolith.
Yes,
but just the fact that all those people came together in and of itself it's
very beautiful to see. Yeah, like I said, just very poignant. Just the fact that even was a thing that happened.
Okay. Boys in the Hood, which is a seminal film.
Yeah, on the 19th at 3, American classic. I feel like you just kind of got to go see it if you haven't seen it already. And then on the 22nd, we've got Get Out, also another one that I personally consider an American classic, or at least a horror classic.
Well, last week we I don't know if you've read the book The Black Guy Dies First.
No, I have heard of it before, but I haven't read it.
Great book, and really talks about Get Out is mentioned in that because it is something. It's a genre talking about horror films
Mhm.
and how Keegan that's
Jordan Peele.
Jordan Peele and his obsession. He loves that's his genre horror, and I think he did a remake of Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
So I think it's a movie. It was one of those movies when we talked last time was here, where it had appeal not just in the African American community, but just across the board.
Yeah.
Very well made film.
It really is a very well made horror film.
And you know when a film is something when a game comes from it. So the running game,
Oh,
you know, where
yeah.
you just run up on people just like out of nowhere, and then even the people who were in that movie and what they went on to do. So.
Yeah, very great film. And then our last two we'll have for the month are Malcolm X, featuring Denzel Washington, directed by Spike Lee. And then also we will have Glory, about a group of Union soldiers who are fighting against racism, not only from other Confederate soldiers, but their own allies, and sort of the trials and tribulations that come with fighting for your own freedom in a land where people may not necessarily like you either way.
Well, you know, and it's what an interesting juxtaposition because, and again, today's book is Malcolm X. The film Malcolm X, done in 1992, was based on the autobiography of Malcolm X by, as told to Alex Haley. And again, it's on our reading list this month for books that I would suggest people read because of Black History Month. But I was just going to get to Malcolm X is just a great film. I mean, it is in terms of how Spike Lee did that movie. It's just an incredible movie.
Mm-hmm.
It was nominated. I think Denzel Washington was nominated for Academy Award, which he did not win. But then he wins for Glory,
Mm-hmm.
which is that interesting juxtaposition where you have, and I think I was telling the joke, what's in Bowfinger, where Eddie Murphy he's this actor and he's trying to he wants his Oscar, and so he says, well, why don't you find a role where I play a retarded slave? And I think he was referring to because did Cuba Gooding Jr. did he win an Academy Award for radio?
Ooh, I don't remember. I want to say maybe he did, but I'm not sure. I'm really not sure on
and
that
then, of
one.
course, Denzel Washington winning, and Glory is it's a great movie too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's.
I was gonna say with Malcolm X also, it's like it's got a long runtime, but you really don't feel it. It really flies by when you're watching it.
And it's just amazing. One, just Denzel Washington is one of the greatest actors that America has ever produced, and by time and this is when you're doing great acting in my mind, when you're doing a biopic, and biopics are very difficult to do because you have to balance between what is fact, right? Because people are looking at that, and then at the same time the artistic license that you have in order to make a movie interesting. And a lot of times it helps that the person looks like the person that they're acting like. The guy who played Elvis Presley in this latest biopic on Elvis.
Yeah, that was Austin Butler, I think.
He looked a lot and sounded. But when you look at Malcolm X, he was about 6'3", 6'4". He's what we call in our community red complected, red hair. And then you look at Denzel Washington, average height, brown skin. But by the end of that movie, Denzel Washington becomes Malcolm X.
Yeah, it's hard to separate them really,
right?
Because he just does it so well.
Right. So we're in the afterlife, and said, "Oh man, I want to meet Malcolm X," and real Malcolm is there. You over there talking to Denzel Washington because he didn't play. And I would just say, and obviously Jamie Foxx.
Yes.
Playing Ray Charles. The ability to be able to play in even in probably a infamous kind of way, Larry Fishburne playing Ike Turner. You know, when
Yeah.
you
There's also I know Eddie Murphy does a really good Stevie Wonder
imitation.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think he was because he was nominated I know for Golden Globe for Dolomite.
Yeah.
And he plays Rudy Ray Moore. I think, you know, with that you know, as a person who loves film, the ability to be able to go in and it should be thought provoking, but at the same time, there should be a certain mindlessness to it.
Yeah, I feel like not every film needs to completely change your life. Sometimes a good popcorn flick is just a good popcorn flick, but also there's always something deeper within a film, regardless of what it is, because a bunch of people work together for weeks, years, months, even to make that. So,
Or you have a role where now you're just so immediately identified with the role. In the book, The Black Guy Dies First, they have you go through and there's this kill, the number of kills you have, because we've done a whole segment on black people getting killed in movies, right? And I thought Samuel L. Jackson, but actually it was Tony Todd who played Candyman.
really,
He died in a lot of movies. I think it was like 22, 24 that have confirmed kills.
huh.
Yeah, I mean,
Interesting.
you know, but so I think in terms of that, and this is kind of a softball lob. Why is film so important for culture?
For film for culture, really is just like such a wide. It's a tool that you can be used so widely and for so many different reasons for so many different people. And there are so many things that we reference. I don't want to say in our day-to-day life, but just like cultural osmosis that we take away through film. Like my example that I usually use is if you hold up a pen, click it, and it makes a flash, you're probably going to think of Men in Black or something. And that's just like some small, tiny little detail from a movie that maybe you've never even seen it, but through cultural osmosis, you just know about it because of the lived experience of so many people being like, yes, I love this thing. And culturally, movies can sort of change many different perspectives and the landscape of what people think about certain issues, certain places, certain people, so on and so forth. So it's just a very good tool for communicating effectively things that people may not think about.
It could also be a tool for propaganda. As we were sitting here thinking, I was thinking about Birth of a Nation by Sesame DeMille and what it did in terms of glorifying the Klan and white supremacy, and then you know you have to balance that between we were just talking about yesterday. Jermaine started singing Zippity Doodah. Zippity Day, right? Just taken from Songs of the South, which is like one of the most patronizing racist movies. You know, was that Uncle Remus? I know it was Uncle somebody.
I believe Uncle Remus. Yeah. And then they didn't even let him into the award ceremony or the premiere or whatever, too, when it was coming out.
Hattie McDaniels couldn't go to the premiere of Gone with the Wind because it was premiered in Atlanta. And Atlanta was so segregated. And then they even talk about how when she was at the Academy Awards, they had her sitting near the kitchen. It took her so long to get to the stage, right? Because of where they had her sit.
Yeah.
And so even then we talk about culture and what's going on in society at the time. And those movies, they kind of represent almost like a time capsule. And so you have to take it into, put it in context.
Yes.
In terms of what it is. So I'm glad, you know, was there a choice when you chose Boys in the Hood as opposed to maybe Menace to Society, or?
I mean, it was definitely like considered, but it was more so that I wanted to highlight John Singleton as a director also. And that's a movie that I know there are people out there who have been like, oh, I've heard of this movie my whole life, never wanted to sit down and watch it. But the opportunity of seeing on the silver screen, I think would definitely kind of change a lot of people to be like, whoa, this is Boys in the Hood. So
yeah, and it's funny because you have Gary Owen, who is a white comedian who identifies as black. He talks about run, Ricky, right? You know, when you think of Morris Chestnut,
Yeah.
right? You're going to think of Ricky, right? I mean, so I think that it's iconic. And then Do the Right Thing, which I thought was very fascinating. Obviously, when that movie was released, they had heightened security at movie theaters,
Yeah, they thought there were going to be race riots.
right? Which was interesting. Why? I think some people had kind of learned from that history,
Mhm.
and but just the people in that movie, and you talk. We should talk about Spike Lee and the people who have done Spike Lee movies who've gone on. I dare I say the greatness.
Oh yeah.
I think Denzel Washington did 3 films for him. Samuel L. Jackson, Rosie Perez. There are people, and a guy I'd hope to interview one day, Giancarlo Esposito.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there are people who you just saw, Ozzie Davis and Ruby D. So the people, and then the guy, Radio Raheem, who passed a few years back.
Oh yeah, he did pass away.
Yeah, and but just to see the folks who came out of Danny Ayala, was it Ayala? I can pronounce his name, but
Yeah, I think Angela Bassett too, if I'm correct. Or
Angela Bassett. Okay, so there, yeah. So when you look at that, and I think we should celebrate our history. I love movies. That I mean. So when you get a chance to see a movie and really dissect a movie, so I just appreciate the offerings that they have. Now, if you call now, 414-444-5250, 414-444-5255 tickets, we do have tickets for Black Lens, the Black History Month film offering. So if you call now, 414-444-5250, you can have tickets, and I think you can go to of the any of the films that you want to see. Hey Ty, thank you, man.
yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Anything else you want to add before we?
Just that we also are going to have the film festival April 24th through May 8th, and that's going to feature a Black Lens lineup as well. So if you are unable to catch Black History Month for whatever reason, then make sure to come check out the film festival. It's a wonderful time, great event for the community, and I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Appreciate it, Mr. Ty Williams. He is the programmer for Black Lens. We're talking about Milwaukee film Black Lens, Black History Month celebration and the films that you're able to see. So again, you can call 414-444-5250, 414-444-5250. We do have some tickets to giveaway for Black History Month through Black Lens. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yep. You're listening to Community Voice. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Voice on WNOV 860 AM and 106.5 FM with your host, Keith Parris.
All right, welcome back to Community Voice. And let me make a couple of quick announcements. Fair Chance Thursdays, there's a hiring event on Tuesday. Manufacturing hiring event. It's going to be at Employ Milwaukee, 2342 North 27th Street. You can bring a resume and they're on the spot interviews. So if you're interested in getting into the field or know someone who might be interested in getting into manufacturing, there is a hiring event there. For more information, you can call Mr. Frederick Nelson at 414-270-1738. And we started it last year, and so we're going to resume a series of conversations, entitled Faith, Justice, and Politics, the intersection of religion, justice, and politics in American society, particularly the impact on lives of descendants of enslaved Africans. These conversations will be with a diverse group of faith leaders from our beloved community. So you can join me tomorrow, February 12th at 9 a.m., where I'll have a conversation with the Reverend Walter Lanier. He's attorney, educator, and pastor at Progressive Baptist Church of Milwaukee. And so tomorrow, our first series of conversations for the new year, faith, justice, and politics. So hopefully, you'll join us tomorrow. All right, we're inside Be Healthy, Be You. Miss Brenda Buchanan, and sitting in for Miss Julia Means, we have Miss Nancy Lay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How's everybody today?
Fantastic.
Doing well.
Yeah, this is the calm.
Before the
Right?
storm, right?
And I did nothing to get that snowball started, so I'm going to be shoveling snow.
Oh.
Yeah, but it's Heart Health Month, and maybe this is a good opportunity. Let's start with that in terms of when we're removing snow. Are there some things that people should keep in mind if they're out shoveling snow?
Well, definitely. Well, first of all, just for everybody, good body mechanics, right? Just making sure you don't injure yourself. Don't overdo it. If you have to do it in phases, do a little bit, go back out and do a little bit more. Really using your legs for strength when you're lifting, just because so many people get injured while they're during that.
Ergonomics?
But when and dress warmly in layers, you can peel them off because you might get pretty hot. As you're shoveling, your heart rate goes up and you start to get really warm. But for a lot of people, if you're not a person that's physically active, or if you're an older person, you really, really, really need to be careful. Even some of the healthiest people, as they get older, shoveling really puts a strain on their heart. And every year you hear about people dying or having a heart attack while out there shoveling snow. If you live alone and you're going to be out there shoveling, certainly let a neighbor know, let somebody know that can be on the lookout for you. But again, phases is important. You just may not be able to do it all at once.
For a lot of us who want to think that we're 20 when we're in fact not, I think that becomes great advice in terms of doing that. I think also, I don't know if there's going to be windy, but there is a possibility, depending on where you are, you can get frostbite.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if you've ever been. I think it is supposed to be a little bit windy, especially closer to the lake. But, I know especially if you're snow blowing, depending on the wind, that's all blowing back in your face. And, that can get really cold and can get painful. But do dress accordingly, especially your toes and your fingers. Have your ears covered up. Those are the things that are most likely get, frostbite. Also, the tip of your nose, harder to cover that up because you need to breathe, but you could wear a scarf on to just help a little bit. But, dress for the weather.
I just add, despite us living in Wisconsin, I don't think we do this very often, right? With especially the last few winters, it doesn't seem like we've had to really do a lot of snow removal. But just to reiterate what Brenda's saying, it's really important just to take your time. We're not used to that level of exertion. and spending that much time outdoors. We just really don't do that much anymore. So it's important to be careful.
Yeah, and I think you want to get it done, but it took all day for the snow to get there.
Mhm.
And so if you can, there have been instances where people, like you said, especially if you're living alone or people don't know, and you might have a medical episode, and then you're just out there,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And then you can get into hypothermia and some other things. So,
Right. And we know obviously time is of the essence. If there's something like that is happening with your heart, you really want to be able to get to the hospital as quickly as possible. So good advice for Brenda, like just saying to have someone else be aware of what you're doing and that you're outside.
well, obviously February is Heart Month, and I don't know how much that has to do with Valentine's Day.
I wonder. Could it be a coincidence?
Could it be just? But we had a conversation. We started a conversation last week talking about heart health, heart disease. So when we again, give us what would be a working definition of heart disease?
Well, the heart disease that I think we'll be probably talking about most is coronary artery disease. So it's really based in our heart. There's different types of heart disease where it's in the peripheral vascular disease, but we'll talk about heart. So coronary artery disease. So tends to be blockages in the arteries, buildup of plaque, cholesterol. When we have high blood pressure a lot over time, we narrow those arteries. So there's different ways that we can end up with having some heart disease, and that can lead to heart attacks. Depending on what the issue is, it could lead to strokes as well if there's a lot of buildup in those vessels.
I just happened to I was channel surfing, and I went past there's a religious oriented station called Impact, and they're doing a thing with Bobby Brown. And I've seen some of the performances of New Edition but Bobby Brown said something that was very interesting. I knew he had health issues. Well, obviously at first I saw the weight. But he talked about that when they did the last tour, the six of them had did the last major tour, he had a heart attack.
Really?
He had a heart attack on the tour. And he's saying now, so what this is showing, the episode I saw, he's working with a trainer. He's getting in shape because I guess they're performing now. And I don't know when this was done. I don't know if it's done last year, but this idea of him getting in shape, he said they had to put a stent in his heart. Now, he said there were some other things beyond the weight. It was drug use,
Stress, probably.
stress, alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And so those things really contributed. So we talk about that a lot of times. Let's just talk about some of the things that we do. Well, let's start with the obvious: weight. How does weight really impact how our hearts operate?
Well, every time we have more weight that we're carrying, it changes our metabolism, and we become more metabolically damaged, I guess is a way to say it. So it makes more us insulin resistance. So we have a little bit more propensity for diabetes. It makes our heart have to work harder to pump the blood just because of the exercise. There's other things.
Mm-hmm. And like we talked last week, when your heart has to work harder like that, then it gets bigger, and that's like I said on here once before, when your friends tell you, oh, Nancy, you have such a big heart, that's a positive thing. But when your doctor says you have a big heart, that's not a positive thing.
But you're a nurse.
Yeah, right.
That still could be a medical diagnosis.
Yeah. Well, I guess. But when your heart gets big, it gets inefficient. So it doesn't work as well. From having to work so hard, it gets big and then it gets flabby. And then that makes it, you're at greater risk for heart failure. And so being overweight is one of the things that makes it so much harder. Not to mention that if you're overweight, you might be more likely to have higher blood pressure, That can be the weight plus the foods that we're eating that have led to our weight gain. And that too makes your heart work harder. And once that damage is done, when that heart gets inefficient and flabby, it doesn't get better necessarily, but you need to take the workload off of it. So you need to lose the weight, get your health issues under control so that your heart does not have to work that hard.
We talk about, and I don't know if this is primarily women or men, when we talk about where you carry the weight. Talk about that in terms of in that abdominal area.
Mm-hmm. That's visceral fat too, abdominal fat, where when they say that apple shape versus like a pear shape where you hold your weight. What that is that fat is visceral fat surrounding all your organs in there. And that that's more unhealthy than just regular adipose tissue that we might carry like other places in our body, like on our thighs or on our butts. But yes, that has been determined to be a higher risk of having more risk for heart disease and other things that can lead for risk factors can be like high cholesterol. Smoking is a big one. Sometimes there's things that are modifiable. So those can be, right, you can quit smoking, you can watch how much you drink alcohol. There's other things that we can't really change. And that could be if we have a strong family history of heart disease, of diabetes. So there's some things we can make big changes to and others we can't really. It doesn't mean we can't still become healthier.
Because when it was, and is that more prevalent in women when we talk about that visceral fat? You always hear about women who, they talk about baby weight after they've had a child and they're still, carrying that weight. Mm-hmm. Is that more prominent in women or men?
I was just going to say, not necessarily. Yeah. And you can have fat without, obviously, if you have a lot of fat distributed, you're going to have visceral fat. But having a little bit of extra fat, adipose tissue, we call it, on your belly, doesn't necessarily mean you have a lot of visceral fat. But when you have a bigger belly, that's really going to be visceral fat. So, and again, we talk about not just the heart, all the organs in there, but over the years, we have more and more and more people with fatty liver disease, which, there's always been some, but now it's much more prevalent because of the amount of weight that we carry, especially as Americans. We're very overweight compared to some other countries. And so, but then that fatty liver may make our liver not function as well as it does too. And that could affect cholesterol production and a variety. Everything's connected.
They did a comparison of the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line. I think they have an average weight of about 338 pounds.
Yes, and 6'6".
And 6'6". And then they compared it to the weight of, I want to say it was the Packers, the first Super Bowl.
Totally different.
It was almost 100-pound difference. And Tom Brady kind of said in passing, where Americans are getting bigger. Is that true? Are we getting bigger?
Yeah. I remember, I can't give you exact statistics, but there was a presentation I was doing about that. And it looked at women like in 1980, I want to say 18% or 20% of women were considered overweight. Now, when you look at that, you look in the 80, especially in African-American women, it's like almost 80%. When you look at those scales, we've talked about the BMI scales. If you look at the difference in how we have put on weight over the years, it's significant. Just look at the little kids. Mm-hmm. We rarely saw overweight children back when I was growing up, unless they had some other health condition. Right. Nowadays, we see a lot of, toddlers and 8-year-olds, to the point that we now have obesity clinics and doctors that specialize for children.
So, it seems like we're on an evolutionary cycle in terms of, I started watching a documentary on Vietnam, the Vietnam War. And they were interviewing the participants. So there were people who were part of the Viet Cong. And there was a Vietnamese woman who said that the Americans were so big that, you know, they were easy targets because compared to them in Asia and especially in
Right.
Vietnam,
Sure.
we were so much bigger.
Mhm.
And I'm just wondering when you talk about that, because you also see an increase of heart disease, how much of that is the fact that we are becoming bigger as Americans?
Yeah, it's our lifestyle. I mean, there's more automated stuff. We don't have to go so far. We don't walk really much anymore. We used to maybe have to walk places to get around. Everything's a lot more convenient. When we pick up our food, we might get it from convenience stores rather than grocery stores.
Or now it's delivered.
Right.
Right.
Or
and,
delivered.
and
right.
cooking, right. I mean,
Yeah.
you
We
know,
don't
my
cook
mother would
anymore.
spend an hour in the kitchen cooking dinner or, you know, sometimes longer than that on a holiday or a Sunday. Whereas now you just order it and take it home. Being in that kitchen, chopping up things, mixing things, you're on your feet the whole time. That's exercise. And now we just pick up our phone while we're watching TV and order our food. And then it shows up the door. It's cooked, hot, ready to go. You just get up and get it. We don't, I mean, remote controls. We used to have to get up to change the TV station. You know,
To the
we
4 channels
don't,
you had.
right. We had 3 channels growing up. You know, and it just, everything is just, we just don't move the way we used to. You look at like in the Mediterranean, they talk about the Mediterranean diet. They have very little heart disease over there because of the way they eat.
And that's probably the diet that we talk about most as being beneficial for heart disease is the Mediterranean diet. The DASH diet would be another similar one to help with hypertension. But just back to your point, I feel it's really generational. Like now the kids, I can still remember have my parents that have been very active and I can see that as an example. But as we are moving forward, like with each kind of new generation, we don't have that kind of examples to see where we're more active.
And I could just take, you know,
Yeah.
just from my generation, we walked a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it wasn't, and part of our relative prosperity is that we walked because we had to, right? I mean, that was reality. It wasn't a car. People weren't going to take you. And then probably the neighborhoods we lived in, a lot of our activities was probably in walking distance. I can remember growing up, I could walk to church. I have to drive in the church now, right? Because it's more than a mile from my house. So just as you said, these little subtle things that had this cumulative effect in terms of impact. We have a caller. Caller, welcome to the program.
Let me turn this radio down. Yeah, thanks for taking my call. And I was going to send you a text, but I figured that would be a long text because I have a pretty, I guess, involved question. So you're talking about heart disease, and I'm curious if you're familiar with any studies or information that shows any evidence of like the heart or the cardio system, particularly like the valves and the vessels that, you know, pump the blood in and out of the heart in a cold environment. And the reason I ask is because a few years back, I recall there was a world-class athlete swimming in one of the Madison lakes. I think it was Monona, one of them. Anyway, it was part of one of these triathlete events. And the waters were cold, and this individual had a heart attack. And so I'm curious if the cold temperatures, what made me think about this is what you said about shoveling snow. So I'm curious if you are familiar with any information that talks about how maybe the valves are constricting when they get exposed to those cold temperatures and reducing the amount of blood flow, that type of thing. Because a friend of mine is one of these athletes, actually my eye doctor. And he's the one who was telling me about this incident that took place at the lake. And this person got into the water, it was colder, and they were swimming. And he said he looked around, all of a sudden, here he is, he's had a heart attack and he's floating there. And they sort of attributed to the fact that he had been in the colder water and had a heart attack. So I'm wondering if, you know how things constrict and expand from cold to heat and that type of thing. So I'm wondering if that has anything, or if you're aware of that being a partial cause when heart attacks happen and people go out and they shovel snow and they're, whether you're in good shape or not, you're still having that same type of trauma to the cardio system. So I'm curious, just curious.
Well, I don't have any like specific studies that I've heard, but I could make a pretty educated guess, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So we do hear about sometimes those athletes that are under some different strain or stress, and we are always really amazed that somebody in peak performance could end up with a heart attack.
Hank Gathers.
Yeah. And I think sometimes there are some underlying factors that she could have been unaware of. So if there could be some congenital types of things, maybe they were never, they might never have been known or made aware of prior to that. So that could be something. I also think that we're putting ourselves in these kind of extreme situations where we're not used to doing like the shoveling. We're not in great shape. So it is a huge, tremendous strain that we're putting on our cardiac system. So that I think is probably another contributing factor that for all of us, when we're doing something we're not used to and exerting ourselves to that level, that there's potential that we could have a heart attack or cause some damage or irregular heartbeats or fainting. I mean, there's lots of different things that potentially is just too much.
Yeah. I was just curious, but Keith, you just mentioned Hank Gathers did Bronny James. Similar,
Right.
type of situation.
Yes.
So, thanks for the information and the answer. Just a curiosity that I had about, being outside and that exertion, but then that exposure to the cold, maybe, so, but thanks again. I appreciate your answer.
I heard you use a term, and we hear it a lot. Can you define what is meant by congenital?
Sure. It's usually something that some malformation that perhaps when we're born, and that's just how it's formed. So during pregnancy. And sometimes they don't mean anything, really. They don't really cause any effects long term. And sometimes they will down the road end up, as we get older, as we grow, they could end up causing some problems.
And last week we talked a little bit about people having heart attacks at a younger age, and a lot of times what they do find out, there is some congenital issue that nobody ever knew about. When they have sudden cardiac arrest, these young athletes, high school athletes, and then they go on and do an autopsy and see that there was some congenital defect that because of their age, it just had not manifested itself. It was there, and there may have been some slight symptoms, but you don't really necessarily pick up on those. But I always say having a baby born without any issues is a miracle every time a baby is born. When you look at all the cell changes that happen during a pregnancy by the second, millisecond, all these things that have to happen to have a baby come out normal. And sometimes those things are not visible to the eye. And until they manifest themselves or you have a problem, you don't notice it.
You're listening to Community Voice or Inside Be Healthy Be You. Ms. Brenda Buchanan, Ms. Nancy Leahy of Ascension, Wisconsin. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Community Voice here inside Be Healthy, Be You. Ms. Brenda Buchanan, Ms. Nancy Leahy, as we talk about February being Heart Health Month. I had a question. What about is the likelihood for women postmenopausal, they have a higher risk of heart disease?
Yes.
Most definitely.
Yeah. Once those estrogen and progesterone levels fall, it does put women at a higher risk of developing heart disease. We lose some of that protective piece from from those hormones. So yes, the incidence of heart disease goes quite a bit higher once we reach that postmenopausal state.
You often see women's blood pressure start to creep up postmenopause. Cholesterol levels start to creep up. Again, as Nancy said, that estrogen provided us all that extra protection, and progesterone, as it goes away, we're at greater risk. So we have to work even harder postmenopause just to stay.
So is there medical, like, is there some medicines that women would take at that point, or is it just being mindful and lifestyle impact?
I think both. They really push being mindful and lifestyle over hormone supplements, unless you have significant issues, because bone loss, getting that little tire around our belly. There's so many things that happen postmenopause, but some of those supplements can put us at increased risk for like breast cancers, other female cancers, and so based on your health history and what your symptoms are and your ability to do some of those lifestyle issues, your doctor should take all of that in consideration when they make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not for everyone, but definitely can really make a difference in a person's life.
Yeah. It can be helpful for some women, like Brenda said. It warrants a conversation. Other things, just to deviate a little bit, just other postmenopausal symptoms that women might be experiencing, if it's night sweats or hot flashes, those types of things that can be very bothersome.
Mm-hmm.
Those can be relieved somewhat when you take like hormone replacement therapy. But to Brenda's point, you have to look at what your underlying like health conditions are prior to that. If you're relatively healthy, don't really have high blood pressure or any known cardiac or heart disease leading up to that, it possibly could be safe for you to be taking
Mm-hmm.
some hormone replacements. But it's not for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But it is an option.
Yeah, and a fairly close family history of some of those female definitely kind of probably knock you out of getting those. But, like Nancy said, the night sweats and then that leads to sleeplessness. When you're not sleeping, that's going to raise your blood pressure. That's going to cause all kinds of other issues. And so sometimes you have to have something to be able to mitigate that, because everything is all tied in together. Hair loss. Women hate hair loss. I mean, everybody does, men and women. But our hair thins, nails get brittle, our skin gets dry. I mean, there's just so many things that happen, and for some people, it's more devastating than others. And so, definitely a conversation you have with your doctor to look at whether or not you're a candidate for some of those things.
What about the impact of contraceptives and the impact that might have on heart health?
Well, some of those, as you age, or if you like, as I age, having other issues, I guess you could call it hormone replacement therapy, because I was on a low dose progesterone based birth control.
Mm-hmm.
To give me to help me through some things that I was going through premenopausal. Because we could talk about menopause all day, but there's some other physiological things that so that was used to help me transition into menopause. They weren't for birth control protection, but that is one of the things that they can use to help. So it replaces those hormones, so it has some benefit. But again, with everything, based on your health history, your doctor can help work with you to make an educated decision on whether even that's appropriate for you, because of, again, whatever's going on in your body.
But I do think for the younger women who are taking it as contraception, we also have to be careful with some of the risk factors of them developing blood clots, things like that. So if they smoke, if they're overweight, those are all risks of some other complications from taking birth control pills. So not necessarily direct coronary artery disease, but can put them at higher risk of developing some other side effects.
What about some of the emotional kind of impact on our hearts, like stress?
Oh, good Lord. I think I've talked before about broken heart syndrome. That's just one that comes to my mind.
Valentine's Day.
Yeah, right. Everybody get ready for that broken heart syndrome this week.
Oh, Lord.
Where you at?
Where you at?
In somebody else's house. That's where you're at.
I'm gonna tell you what. Whoever removed the 29th and 31st from February, they should come get the 14th too.
Well,
Right.
you get the 29th every 4 years.
Mhm. But
Well,
it
take
is
14.
amazing what one day can do to a person, the stress surrounding that. But, that broken heart syndrome can come from loss. I mean, divorce, death, anything that is, those stress hormones just wreak havoc on our body. And, good hormones come in and they make us feel good for about an hour and they settle down. Those stress hormones, they stick around for a long time. And then they do damage to the heart. But with the broken heart syndrome, you get an arrhythmia, an abnormal arrhythmia that can put you at risk for blood clots, heart attack. I'm pretty sure that's what my mother died of. When my niece died that night, my son called me and said, "Grandma's not right." I said, "You need to take her to the hospital." Her heart rate was 30 at that point. She was in the ICU for 2 weeks. And then she died a few months later. She just never recovered from that. And so you see that the difference with that and a regular arrhythmia, though, is studies show that after a period of time, especially when you learn you're grieving or you get better control of what's going on, those rhythms tend to go back to normal. They may need help in the meantime, but long term, you may not need all that help. But with the other arrhythmias, that can just be stress related because you're stressed all the time. That fight, flight, freeze, where we're stuck in that. There's never that up and down. And those people, those arrhythmias will kill you.
But we do know, though, that working on stress reduction can help improve our cardiac health for sure. So, I mean, Brenda and I were just reading about some studies that was directly impacting A1C reduction with diabetes. But we know that similar techniques and massage and stress reduction and meditation, those things can directly lower your blood pressure. They can probably cause some vasodilation so that relaxes our blood vessels, in addition to just giving us a sense of calm.
Mm-hmm.
So those things are really important, and people don't pay attention to that very much.
I don't think people realize the impact, in our diabetes class, when we talk to them about stress reduction, how it raises their blood glucose significantly, just stress, and how you have to actively work on finding ways to reduce stress. And for what works for you may not work for me. We might have different things that help us, but we're never not going to have stress. That's a part of everyday life. And for some people, it's more significant than for others. But we all have to find ways to deal with our stress, or it will cause damage to us, short term and long term.
I was going to see if we have a caller, but I wanted, we had, when we came in the studio, excuse me, prior to coming on the air, Brenda said she saw the Luther Vandross documentary, and there. So I want to talk about, because there were some things there that just how he responded to some things, and so let's talk about that. But I'll get the caller. Caller, welcome to the program.
Yes, I was calling. If they clinic, do they do bereavement counseling?
Oh, you said at the clinic, do they do bereavement counseling?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Do you know someone I can call or something?
I can't give you anybody specifically, but there are lots of places that do bereavement counseling. There's individual counseling as well as very specific groups like loss from suicide, loss from cancer. There's a lot of support groups out there that help with people with bereavement, but also a therapist that you're comfortable with is good for helping with bereavement. But if you're savvy, you can go online and Google some of those support groups, but there are a lot of them in the city of Milwaukee.
Okay, thanks.
Let's talk then. We'll talk a little bit, but the idea of grieving, and you hear how our resistance is lessened because I guess we never think of it as stress, but bereavement could be very stressful.
Oh my gosh, yes. I woke up this morning to one of my friends who her best friend suddenly died over the weekend. She's in her late 40s. And it broke my heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
I lost a best friend.
Yeah, me too.
Many years ago, and it changes you forever.
Yeah.
So it just broke my heart to know that she now is going through that, and it was sudden and unexpected, and can really just, like you were talking about your immune system, all of that, it affects everything. You don't eat as well, right? You may be immobile. People use unhealthy coping mechanisms to try to deal with that grief. And so the grief itself is stressful on the body, and then how we handle it also can be very stressful on the body.
Let me shout out Brother Nate Luckett, the good folks there at the New Pitts Mortuary. Good morning. Deacon Michael Jones, you good folks. Hey, y'all. As we talk about grief.
Right.
Well, you know how when you say something and then your phone pops up on your phone? Pops up on your phone that you are just talking about that?
All type of stuff going on.
So, yeah.
The hearse just drives by.
As we talk about it.
Emergency, the alerts going
Right,
off.
alerts going off. And just but yet to lose someone that's close to you, and when it's sudden, where I lost one of my, if not my closest friend, and the crazy thing was we had talked the night before about us getting together the next day, and then I get a phone call from his daughter saying no, and just even how to process that and how difficult it is, and just all because emotions impact our hearts too, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, when you meet someone, there is that kind of physiological reaction we have, what we call physical human attraction, right? And but a broken heart, man, there's as I segue into the piece on Luther, my favorite Luther Vandross album is Luther Vandross, and there's a song on there that says that hearts are broken all the time, but this time the heart that's broken is mine. And so when we see people dying, all this stuff every day, and then when it visits us, then you think like, wow. I mean, and to get to a point where it's so dark, and you're right, your body is working, trying to respond to that.
Yeah.
You were gonna say something, Jimmy?
No, I was just going to speak off of grief. I know I experienced grief that I still carry from when I lost my best friend. He was like my brother. We was in the studio the day before. We recorded a song that I still have a hard time listening to, and it's been since '98. And it's hard for me to go to his grave site because the day that he was killed, I remember I was on my way to his house, and I was on my way to pick him up, and just leaving out the house, but I kept going back and forth in the house. I don't know what it was that kept stopping me from, getting to picking him up. So while he was waiting on me, he decided to use call another friend who we thought was a friend for a ride, and that ended up being his last ride. That person he called set him up to have him killed. And when I got to his grandmother's house to pick him up, I just remember his grandmother coming out crying and saying that he was laying in the street. I still remember that. That was 1998, October 17th, 1998.
I can
That's-
just.
I was say that's trauma.
Yeah, so
yeah,
I
kind of
still
grief
Very
never leaves
traumatic.
you.
Yeah.
carry that, and with the music, and I'm trying to keep it in because it still
That's all right.
hit me, but with the music, I still can't play that song that we ended up recording. That was going to be the single that we was going to release that following year. And I only visit his grave twice since '98 because I still feel like it was my fault. Like if I would have got there in time, he would have never been in the
So
car.
you're saying that the guilt that's
Oh man, to this
Yeah.
day,
you got to release that,
and I don't know how.
Yeah, right. But hopefully, and that's talking to someone. But part of that is we talk about forgiveness. One of those things is forgiving ourselves, and the greatest form of forgiveness is just release.
Yeah.
I mean, I could tell you, I can give you date and time, August 12th, 12:59, 2024. I get the news that Keon has passed.
Yeah.
And it was just like, and especially when you always say you just talked to someone, but literally you had spoke to someone. And then when you get that news, and then how do I process that, man? I mean, I'm just, and so maybe I'm getting to how we put stress in perspective. You hear this too will pass. Whew, sometimes it just takes so long.
And sometimes, like for example, just this morning, I'm hurt for her, but it also brought up that pain that I still carry inside of me. So grief is never it's never linear, right? You don't start here and in there and it's over. Sometimes it revisits, it comes back, and it can be a song, it can be a smell, it can be an experience, it can even be a good experience where you don't have them to share it with. So I always tell people, give yourself grace, be kind to yourself, because it's not linear. I know people who have lost their moms that still cry on a regular basis,
or holidays.
Yes.
We talked about that leading up to the holidays, how people who might have been with you last year are not with you this year, for the holidays, and then you're trying to process it, and it's it's easy for somebody, again, that gets back to the sentiment of that line I gave, man, you get through it. I tell people that, from this religious lens, your testimony is edited, right? Because if you look at the raw footage, the pain, all the anguish and all of that, I mean, and sometimes it's just not pretty. I mean, it's not, but then maybe as we begin to think about it, what caused me to hurt, it shows the depth of feelings that I had for that person. And then maybe I can pivot to where did that depth of feeling come from? It came from how good a person that person was, or what they meant to me. And so then, you think about that, because we say it all the time on this show. Everybody gonna die. And we understand it intellectually, but emotionally, that's the hard part. Yeah, of course everybody dies. We know that everybody dies. And we do know that everybody dies from heart failure.
And Keith, and after that, they're dead. They're dead. Yeah, Debo's not here to add in, but yeah, their heart is no longer beating.
Right. So even
This is our weekly thing.
our
about-
weekly thing. Yeah. Just to remind people that when you're dead, you're dead.
Yeah, your heart's not beating
Your
anymore.
heart's not beating
You're dead.
anymore. Which was real, and I had never thought about that. All those, and just kind of that light bulb went off.
Mhm.
Like, well, yeah, when your heart stops beating, you're dead.
Mhm.
I mean, because the heart is pumping the blood that makes everything operate.
Correct.
It's kind of like an engine dying. Once the engine
It
is
is
dead,
very
Right.
true.
yeah, so to be able to be able to understand that, but then even stress. It seems like we're in a very stressful political climate, and it begins to impact. But I think it was interesting when you start talking about coping. Now we need to be probably mindful of our coping mechanisms because of the impact they can have on our physical health.
For
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah, as we sit there and try to get through it. But the one of the things about the documentary on Luther Vandross was his struggle with weight,
Mhm. Struggle with food.
food.
Like he said, I think about it all day long.
Oh, he said it was his drug, and for a lot of people, it's their
Mhm,
drug. So
right.
but the whole how, especially being an entertainer, where he has to be very visual. I used to love doing community voice when we were just radio,
Mhm.
but now we're video on top of it. And there's a
Mhm.
certain level of how you should look, your presentation. We used to come in here looking
Mhm.
like, who saw us other than the
Yeah.
people in the studio? Um,
Well, I was even like when they did the Sesame Street stuff, when Luther was a part of that group, and
right.
they would do all those Sesame Street songs, how they comment about the fact that what he looked like. He was the best singer out of all of them,
Mhm.
but his weight was an issue, not just for him, but for producers, for other people that wanted to bring him on. And because he was so talented, he was able to get past that as far, but it still limited him, not just from himself, but from the outside world of getting to where he wanted to be.
But one
you
of the
know.
things one of his friends pointed out to him was he would have these dramatic swings and weight. He'd lose a lot of
Mhm.
weight. It became Cedric the Entertainer kind of had a joke out there that, once he talked about his curl, but then he talked about, because we do it.
Mhm.
Who'd you like best? Big Luther, Little Luther?
Mhm.
And the whole thing about he would have this. Now that puts enormous stress
Oh my
on the
God, the
heart.
up and down like
Yeah,
that.
the up and
Mhm.
down. And so when people are even looking at weight loss, and look, vanity drives a lot of it. Let's
Mhm.
not deceive ourselves. How we appear to the world is important to us. But Oprah said something a few years back, because she was another person who was wrestling with weight. And then I don't know if it was a trainer or someone said, get in the best condition you can be in for
Mhm.
you.
Mhm.
Don't
Not
Right.
not what other people
right.
think
Right.
is.
You're not going to be Nancy
Mhm.
Leahy.
Mhm.
Right? I mean, in terms of your body type, the weight, but what is the best, healthiest weight that you can
Mhm.
carry?
Mhm.
And look at it from that perspective. But vanity is strong, man.
It is, and his fluctuations in weight were all directly related to what he was experiencing, at the
His
time that he
emotional
was
life,
going
right.
through. And when he talked about that song "Any Love," I think that's what did me in. That showed me how profoundly lonely he was.
I was gonna say that-
And it hit me so hard. You know how overly empathetic I am. It took me all day. I had to watch some bang bang shoot 'em up movies to get rid of that. I mean, he's no longer here, but the pain of what he had to be feeling, not being able to have love, and it just broke my heart.
I was just gonna say the stress that you're talking about physically, but that mental stress is just as can be as devastating.
Yeah, we have this term, failure to thrive, right? The importance of wanting to be loved.
Mhm.
And I think you're lying. I don't need anybody to love me. We all do.
Mhm. And I love that song, but I never listened to it that deeply until they said, what is one song that is your favorite or that? And he's like, this was me. This song was all about me and who I am. And then as you listen to, they sang the words and you listened, and that's the first time I guess I ever looked at it that deeply. that
Oh,
that
you
song
like
was
me?
in.
We just grooving.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And
And
then
then all of a sudden it's
it's
like that's
is
he's
that
talking
what he
about
was singing
himself.
about?
Right.
That song's about peanut butter. You're listening to Community Voice. We're gonna take a quick break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Community Voice, and we're joined in the studio by Ms. Brenda Buchanan, Ms. Nancy Leahy. We're just talking about heart health, and we're talking about how the emotions impact our heart and our heart health. And we were talking off air about the Luther Vandross documentary. I think the other thing is that when you're a public person, there is an enormous amount of stress just attached to the fact that people are looking at you. People pay attention to it. Most of us are just anonymous. We can just kind of move on, and who knows? But the amount of stress. But he said he had lost all his weight, did very good with his diet, did very well. He was at something, and I guess in the green rooms or before performances, they have food. And he said, you know what? And it wasn't in the documentary. There's another interview he did. He said, I'll have this bagel, just a bagel. I'm not even going to put it. He said
that was the beginning.
It was like an alcoholic who had quit drinking and started drinking again, because food for a lot of us is a stress reliever. It is instant gratification.
Dopamine, serotonin, all those
Yeah.
great
Hoping
feeling.
that we're-
Yeah, and so you get through it. Because I feel like, oh man, I'm not putting a lot of pressure, but there is pressure. This idea that I can be better, and as a person, and the stress that feels like going. I guess sometimes you just just be you, accept you, be comfortable with you. You always hear people saying that love you. But sometimes, based on all the trauma, that was something else we talk about, trauma in your life, all these things. I look at kids and their little lives, and I'm thinking puberty is coming. And when puberty comes, the world changes.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, and now you're getting into you being picked on, and now you're getting into, do you look a certain way? And then you get to high school. And everybody knows that high school is just like, oh my God.
All about the clicks.
All the clicks.
Well, and social media has changed
Oh
that
my
whole
God.
perspective completely. And like you were saying before, like the outside forces of trying to like change your persona of how you're looked at. And yeah, it's tough. That is stress.
Yeah, and when we were kids, we got home and it was safe, right? You got off that school bus. You gonna talk about your mama again?
No, you grew up in Race City. I grew up here.
But,
I used to catch the bus up here, and I need to be off this bus stop by the time the kids get there.
Physically safe. I mean, safe as far as you didn't have the emails, you didn't have social media, the bullying, except maybe in your own neighborhood. But in your house there was some safety, emotional safety.
But maybe that's how much have we mythicized how good it was?
I'm not saying how good it was,
because there was a
I
lot of
saying,
stress and trauma in our homes.
It was, but but now you've got it.
It's exposed,
right? Yes, and you've got it from the kids that you could get away from school, especially when you're younger. The people that were treating you bad, now they can bully you on Facebook, on Instagram. They can put stuff out there for everybody else to see. It's just extra, but you're right. Some people went home, and actually this social media might have been a release for them, right? Because that was where they could have a different life.
Yeah, I mean, you and especially when you look at people who, we can take our pain and use that pain to benefits. I in gospel music, and a lot of gay men who wrote beautiful music, but part of that was the pain for people picking on them for being gay. And so then that music became an outlet for them, or if a person who's overweight, it became an outlet. But I think you're right in terms of, first of all, we got more people in the world too. But there is this myth about the good old days. There was alcoholism. There was domestic violence. There was people who were distant. from kids. I mean, it was all those things.
Mhm.
And maybe we just, because the one thing you never wanted in my family anyway was you never wanted your business out in the streets, right?
Right.
Oh, that was
For
pretty
sure.
much every
Right. What
family.
happened
You
in the
did-
crib
Mhm.
stayed in the crib.
Yeah.
And now you're right, with social media, people don't worry about that as much. As a matter of fact, any kind of attention
Is good attention.
is
yeah.
good attention in some people's minds. And now that's being amplified because we can put information out there. I'm really circumspect to what I put on Facebook, for example. Because I'm thinking like, that's really kind of private.
There are some very private things
Yeah.
on Facebook.
Be it. I know. I was just like, we're reading this, right? But me and Keon used to argue, and then he kind of came around and said, Keon, we have 3 lives. We have our public life, we have our private life, and then we have our secret life.
Mhm.
Now,
And we all have a little bit of a
everybody,
secret life
I mean,
that yes.
you guard,
Mhm.
that you protect. One of the things I talk about with friends is that a good friend, you're allowed to be who you are without fear of judgment.
Mhm. Being able to be vulnerable.
Be vulnerable, and because you can trust that
Mhm.
person, right? And to be able to do that. That's why I did a message on Friends, and I talked about. I said, I got close to 1,000 people on Facebook that call friends.
Mhm.
No,
No.
no.
Mm-mm. They fit right in this little hand.
Right,
there.
right. In
Mhm.
terms of being able to be able to judge, but then it does impact our health. I mean, and I would tell you, we were just talking about high school and how tough high school was. Man, college was a relief. I'm gonna be honest with you. From
Whole
high
different
school,
thing.
totally different world when I got to college. But high school, and I was just looking at some pictures I posted from time to time. I just posted my little senior year,
Mhm.
and I was going, and I'm saying this, and don't take this wrong. I was looking at myself, and I was going, "You were a good looking kid," but I didn't feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't feel that way, man. I didn't.
Mhm.
I didn't. I mean, and when I look back on it now, our what makes us attractive is more than our physical appearance. But look, people see your physical.
That's the first thing.
So when
they
I
see.
look at the
Mhm.
pictures, I'm going, "Oh man, Keith, oh dude." But I'm gonna tell you, man. Good friend of mine passed away. We were down in Evanston, Illinois for her funeral, and we were at the repast, and they did a picture collage. And my sister had gone down with me, and so I'm looking at the picture collage, and I'm going, "Oh, I didn't know Sandra knew her, and Sandra knew da. And Sandra's in this picture with this guy." And I go, "I don't ever remember Sandra with that guy. He's a good looking dude." I'm trying to remember, did I remember that guy? And this is a true story. My sister will confirm it. She walked up and she said, "Fool, that's you."
Wow.
I mean,
Yeah.
it was, so I never did. I mean, and there was a lot of things that go into, insecurities that you have as a kid. I think that maybe I had, I'm on the couch. I had, I think the high school I found myself in, based on the economic class differences, I think that there was a lot of acne. But I just never, as a kid. Now there was some other kids out there, man. They knew they were good looking. I mean, and they were, but not me.
Some
I mean,
knew they were and they really weren't. So there you got that.
isn't
too.
beauty in the eye of the beholder?
Right.
Mhm. Well, yeah, he or she looked in the mirror and thought, "Yeah, that's it," and we're all like, "I don't think so."
Yeah, I just I had never, and I don't know why we're going through this little counseling moment here, but no, I did need that. Thanks, Devo. Because I was looking at the picture and I'm going, man, dude. But and isn't that amazing? Sometimes the disconnect between where you're here and where you are emotionally and where you are even spiritually.
But Keith, doesn't everybody have that phase where they kind of wonder about themselves? I mean, like you questioning whether you were good looking or not. Even I, as good looking as I am, I went through
What?
that phase.
There was a period where you doubted.
Yeah.
What? I'm shocked.
What did he say? It was a period. What did you say?
Yeah. I think it happened.
Know your history.
I don't think you know your history, Jack.
No. Watch this. I want to bring this full circle.
Okay.
I watched this with one of my daughters as she was going through school, and she was down on herself because she hadn't matured and she had no breasts when all of her classmates did.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just little things like that where you find inconsistencies maybe with yourself that I'm speaking to. You understand what I'm saying, Brenda?
Mm-hmm. I do.
Okay.
I think we compare. I mean, it was interesting. I talked about acne when I was preteen. We used to call those teenage bumps. So you couldn't wait really to get acne because that was an indicator that you were a teenager, right? You know, and then you got it and you realize,
like,
ooh,
like
man, this
then there was another part of those bumps too, where they said, you were not getting sex.
I know. I knew exactly that's what you were going to say.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that was also.
what, Jermaine? What? I mean, since we on the couch,
I had no bumps.
Of course, you had no bumps.
How many lumps do you want? No lumps.
Oh, I know you had that face. It was just
baby face.
Smooth as a baby's bottom.
Man.
I'm still baby face Edmonds. I can't grow hair or nothing. Jesus.
Oh.
That was another indicator. I don't know how much of that was a myth, but it was just like there was a whole lot that went to even. I don't. Hopefully, we'll talk about dermatology and skin diseases, but they were. I remember. I don't know if you saw it in Facebook where I put in. I think the class of '74. For the new uniforms we had. So
yes.
Those were new unis, right? And it was a company that was Al McGuire was part of called Sandnet. They did athletic wear. And that year, all of a sudden, I just broke out like right up in here. I mean, I got like this rash is
this ain't good.
This ain't good. And just put the uniform on. So I go to the dermatologist, and it was so funny. So I come into the dermatologist, and he must have had a resident there with him. And I'm anxious.
Right.
Like, dude,
what's happening
here? And so he turned to his colleague, and he said, "That's a PR. That's a PR. I am not Puerto Rican. What do you mean that's a PR?" He said, "That's a puberty rash."
Yeah, I was just saying puberty rash.
And I guess the uniform I had a reaction,
and
it was just like,
dermatitis.
Man, that's yep. And I used to get that when I used to starch my collars, and you rub, and they look like hickeys.
Yeah.
So he was starching his collars all the time. Ooh, look at Keith.
Good one,
Keith
Brenda.
got a lot of hickeys.
Yeah. Keith got
all over his neck.
And now we find out years later it was starch.
It was starch.
You old devil, you. Know your history.
But hickeys was always something that was very interesting to me. We went down this rabbit hole. I can remember when I got my first hickey. It was the young lady lived next door to me.
Sure, it's okay to tell it.
Right here.
Is the statute of limitations up,
right?
Keith? Is the statute of limitations up on
Yeah, I'm hoping. I was a teenager. And I remember coming in the house, and my complexion is obvious. And my mama go, "Boy, what happened to you?" And then I found out what a hickey was. And I don't know what this thing is that people wanted to do, hickeys. And I don't even know where the term came from, in terms of, but anyway. Which is what? That's
to
just
me,
really...
it's more disturbing now when I see people in their 50s and 60s
grown.
with hickeys. It's like come on
Oh,
now.
no.
Really?
Love is still fresh.
No.
No, you don't do all that.
No, Keith. That's really starch.
In his case,
We got Valentine's Day coming up.
There you go.
That's what I was
So are
thinking.
you
on my-
suggesting that on Valentine's Day that people can't get a hickey on Valentine's Day?
I'm working, so I'm not going to say my real response. But
And let's do what medically. What is a hickey just medically?
well,
Just
you're
so
breaking the
a
blood
bruise.
vessels,
it's
right?
a
It's a
bruise.
bruise.
It's
Yeah,
a bruise.
It's a ouch. That's what.
Yeah, but it was for some people a badge of honor.
it was.
Right.
It was a badge
Especially
of
if you were trying to show that no, that's my woman or my man. I want you to see what they did.
How they shirts all the way
Mhm.
down there.
Uh-huh.
You see all the that. Like what is it?
And she didn't even do it on my neck. She did it
On
like
your face.
on my face.
Oh, so it was more like she was marking her property.
I don't know what that was.
It
I
was
know my
branded.
mama had a
Did your
very
That's
mama
what-
know where it came? Who gave it to you?
Yeah, it was Stephanie next door.
Oh,
So
Did
Stephanie
you-
did.
and how did your mother like Stephanie after that?
My mother wasn't so mad at Stephanie as she was at me.
At you?
Right. You know, in
She
terms
held me
of,
down, Mama. I
I'd
didn't
have
know
been
what she was
Mama,
doing.
it was Stephanie's lips.
It-
It
yeah,
wasn't
it
mine.
was.
Yeah, I didn't know what she was doing, but I liked it.
I still,
till I saw you.
I liked it, mommy.
You took all the fun out of. But no, you know, we and I think that again, we talk about how I don't know how hickeys impact your heart health, but when you but you
Broken
know, we
blood
talked
vessels.
about like grief, you know, and how we process it. Here's another thing, I think, just what we just did, humor.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
You know, and that's if I'm really struggling, have a bad day or going through a little bout of depression, I purposely watch comedies
Oh yeah.
because all of a sudden I forget and I start laughing. Then you get those rush of those good hormones that, help. And so I purposely will watch comedies, look for comedies.
And I was gonna say, just having this moment right here that we was just laughing really took me away from what I was
Mhm.
thinking
Mhm.
and struggling with. So that was way from my mind until I
Yeah.
just started talking about it now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm back on the couch. No, but just laughter is great.
It does.
You know, it soothes the soul. And
Mhm.
yeah, laughter is something.
And you know, I mean, and sometimes maybe we take ourselves too seriously,
Sure.
and just understand that it is. I've been telling my folks here that I've been watching funny church videos,
Mhm.
and the first one that came out was this woman. She was at church, and when you don't know, but she's crying, and then you found out why she was crying. She's crying to keep from busting out laughing.
Yes.
Because
Those
the
are some
choir was
serious-
so awful.
Oh,
And she was just, she was just like tears. It's just like, oh my God. For something that's just so funny. I remember when I went to see the movie, I'm Gonna Get You Sucker.
Oh, that was a funny one.
I was still laughing the next day.
Yeah, I
Uh-huh.
bet.
Yeah.
There were some parts in there, man.
It was funny.
It was just
The
funny.
toe,
Hilarious.
when what's his name's toe was all swollen up. And,
Jim Brown.
oh God, that was
The
funny.
the funniest part of that one was when Antonio Fargas, I think his name is, when he got out, he went home and got shot,
Walking in
Yeah.
them
put them
shoes
stacks on with the
with a
fish,
fish in
tanglers.
them.
The fish in them, yeah.
Big old sombrero
Yeah.
head. I mean,
And then he fell. Then that he
He thought they was,
ankle flipped.
Yeah.
he thought they was saying how sharp he was. They was laughing at him. He was trying to run.
yeah, it broke the heel.
It broke the
Yeah.
heel.
Broke the heel.
That was a
Or
fun
Isaac
one.
Hayes when he shot himself all them times.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think when you're able to.
That was just ridiculous comedy.
Well, and that's what, and
He had
that,
a
and
gun
I,
everywhere.
I was saying that to Ty Williams, that
Mhm.
sometimes you need just mindless
Yeah.
Yeah.
entertainment. I was saying
Mhm.
after the election, I didn't want to see any news. And I happened on
Mhm.
this show called Saints and Sinners, right? I got addicted to it. It was so mindless.
Yeah.
It was just like, okay, all right, maybe the world ain't that serious.
Yeah.
You know, just be able to take a break. You know, you talked about, again, we're dealing with stress, how you can go in, step away from the situation and just breathe. And even though it was one of my favorite songs, it's the end of the world as we know it, I feel fine. It's probably not the end of the world.
Mhm.
You know, that we're able to get through it. We talk a lot about diet, you know, in terms of what we can do. And then, like we say, coping. How are we coping? Because a lot of I think what we're doing is probably an emotional reaction to what we're experiencing.
Oh, very much so. Food is soothing, and it's, when we want food to soothe us, we're not thinking, man, I gotta get a salad. Oh man, you're thinking of those foods that will really satisfy you. When you're eating and you're going, what else do you do that you stop and go, that's so good.
We can't talk about it.
You're working.
If that's what you do.
You just told us you were working.
Yeah, and didn't I put it in the context
I just
of
threw
food?
my hands up in there like, Lord,
Yes.
But you also said that what else?
You did
That's true. I didn't mean for you to reply.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was kind of like rhetorical. Like, yeah, what else, man? We love food, right? Yeah.
You don't know. We do a lot of lists. We do a whole lot of lists. So when you do that, people already. Oh, I got a list.
And Keith, when I want that special food, what do I want? You should know,
Chips.
Keith. There you go, potato chips.
Potato chips.
Did you know
no,
that George Crumb
I heard you on
in
the radio.
1853
Made the first potato chip.
You need to thank him, Brenda.
I know, I do every day.
Know your history.
This was brought to you by A&J Liquor.
See, you can tell Nancy's my friend. She knew what it was.
Yeah, and I saw one time this little bag of chips, and it just she looked like Tyrone Biggums.
Talk about me.
She saw the chips and she
had a habit.
Lips got all white.
They were sitting right in that corner.
She was going to the show over. I'm sick. I need a fix.
Chips.
Wow.
Chips.
I'm gonna give you for you, Brenda, pizza. You give me around pizza. And I'm like, and chicken wings. Of course, chicken wings.
Yeah.
I was just
thinking when she said what food, I'm thinking, man, I could go for some chicken wings.
That
today.
bird.
chicken wings
bird.
right now, man.
That seasoned bird.
Seasoned right,
That's it.
dude. It is just like, but I didn't realize that was her weakness, and then she was just like, are those chips over there?
You couldn't take it.
I tell you what, though, it's really amazing. I don't eat at repasts. I barely eat at banquets, but I don't eat at repasts. But I tell you what, I will sneak over and get. If they got meatballs, I'm gonna load my little barbecue Swedish
meatball.
yeah.
Swedish meatballs.
Yeah, Swedish meatball. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something wrong with y'all.
I had
Food.
the chance to interview Cheryl Lee Ralph, and there's a movie called Distinguished Gentleman, where she was in with Eddie Murphy, and they had a phone thing that they would call. It was like phone dating, and so they were international women, and she would go. Now remember, this is an African-American woman. She goes, "Yeah, this is Inga from Sweden." and every time I interviewed her, I kept trying to say, "Don't say hi. This is Inga from Sweden." Oh man, thank you. Let me thank Mr. Ty Williams. Let me thank Miss Brenda Buchanan, Miss Nancy Leahy. Debo, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Jermaine, thank you.
Yes, sir.
And Jermaine, just remind us, what should we do?
Know your history.
There you go. Again, join us tomorrow. Faith, Justice, and Politics. Reverend Walter Lanier. Hey, the good Lord willing, creek don't rise. Hope to talk to everybody tomorrow. And as always, go from this place in peace.
Oh, yeah.